Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we are going to be looking at my Game Week 17 team reveal. I'm one of those managers that owns Erling Haaland, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I plan on doing with him if he is available or if he is confirmed out. So you want to stick around for this video, make sure you do drop a like and smash that subscribe button. It'd be awesome to have you as a subscriber over this festive period. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. Okay, so before we deep dive into my actual team, I want to show you a really helpful kind of view on what the transfers are going into Game Week 17. So we got this awesome slide here based on the Fantasy Football Fix site, looking at the top transfer combination. So first up, in the goalkeeper, the most transferred combination is Areola to Dubravka. I think quite a few managers have been a little bit put off by that injury to Areola. They've seen Dubravka start in the Champions League against AC Milan, and it's a real easy sideways move for another goalkeeper who's starting for what we consider a better defence, and I definitely would agree with that. However, if you're one of those managers that's considering that move right now, you do need to note that Areola is back in training for West Ham, was on the bench last night in the Europa League, and we are expecting him to return to the team for Game Week 17. So I don't really think this is a desperate move. It feels very much like a luxury transfer, but if you have no other fires to put out in your team, then I don't mind the Areola to Dubravka move with the other 7.5% other managers that have done that transfer for goalkeepers. Now, looking at the defenders, of all defensive transfers, 6% of those moves have been Trippier to Pedro Porro, and I don't really have any arguments against that. Now, I do think Trippier, if you own him right now, is a hold. I know he doesn't play in Game Week 17 due to the suspension, but after that, the fixtures for the next few are fantastic for Newcastle. I do think he could be a great differential. I say differential, more of a differential than what he has been, just because he's been sold by so many FPL managers. But on the other hand, at 5.4 million, Pedro Porro is one of the best value defenders in the game. And I'm one of those managers that hasn't owned him, and I feel very lucky the fact that he hasn't gone off with any double-digit hauls. I look at the Wolves game with some last-minute goals conceded. I look at the Newcastle game. Those were opportunities there for double-digit returns, and it was unlucky that he didn't. So I think he's a brilliant transfer for any FPL manager going into Game Week 17. Now, interestingly, with the midfielders, there haven't been as many transfers because I think naturally everybody's tempted by the forwards, which we will come on to in a minute. But 6% of all midfield transfers has been Bryan Mbeumo to Son. And again, I don't really have any arguments with that move at all. If you don't own Son, going away against Nottingham Forest tonight looks like a great fixture. And the next few after that are brilliant. The only thing that I would say is Son obviously is travelling to the Asia Cup for Game Week 21 and beyond. So you've only got the next 4 game weeks of Son, and then you will have to take him out of your teams. Just because he's so much money, you can't sit him on your bench for numerous weeks after that. So Mbeumo to Son, a good move, but just remember, after 4 game weeks, you will have to sell him. But I don't mind that at all. I think for the next 4, you shouldn't overlook Son as an FPL option. But last up, the big one, of course, is going to be the forwards. Everybody is looking to either sell Haaland, maybe hold him. Nobody really knows what they're doing. So 17% of all forward transfers has been Erling Haaland to Dominic Solanke. Now, he did go up in price last night to 6.7, I believe, million. So a lot of FPL managers are making this move. And realistically, with Luton at home, it's a brilliant entry point for Dominic Solanke. And it feels very much a case of, if you don't do the move in Game Week 17, you're probably never going to do it because you're missing one of the plum fixtures at home against Luton. So Haaland to Solanke is dominating a lot of the transfers. Now, it's worth noting, of course, I do think Watkins is a brilliant option as well. And when I look at the sales for Erling Haaland, we can see the second most is Watkins, followed by Julian Alvarez. So a lot of managers, if they're not going Solanke, are going to Watkins. But I imagine a lot of people sat here right now own Watkins. So Solanke is the next best alternative. I do really like Alvarez, but I only would go there if we had confirmation that Haaland is ruled out, and then you are willing to be navigating the blank Game Week 18 without him in your teams. Otherwise, I think Solanke is a brilliant alternative. But I thought this would be a really good slide to show what the top transfer combinations are going into the weekend. Solanke being one of the most bought players in the week, and he could be a transfer for my team. So with that said, let's go into what my team is looking like in Game Week 17. Okay, so with a little bit of context right now, my overall rank is 299,000. I'm really happy where I am in the world right now off the back of a few green arrows. So fingers crossed we can get another one this week. Currently got one free transfer and 1.9 million in the bank. And I'm going to go through my team here because, of course, as I mentioned, I am an Erling Haaland owner and I do have a few directions that I can take this team dependent on the press conferences and news today. And what I will say before we get into my team is I really would advise managers staying active on social media today. Remember, the deadline is today, 6:30 p.m. UK time. We could get, obviously, the press conferences from Pep Guardiola's, not Erling Haaland, but also we might get some team leaks from some sources that are in the know. So I would recommend, if you haven't made your Haaland move, try and make it as close to the deadline as possible, just in case we get some crazy early news, even though Man City play the following day after the deadline. So first up, the goalkeeper, and you can already see the bench that I have on my screens here. I had a deliberation between Dubravka and Areola this week. Areola back with West Ham, but I'm going to back Newcastle to bounce back at home against what is a free scoring Fulham team right now, but I always back the Newcastle defence. My only concern, of course, Trippier being out. Could that be a problem for the defence in general? Maybe off the back of them getting dumped out of the Champions League as well. That could be a negative factor for the team. But I'm going to back the double Newcastle defence and hope that it is coming in clutch for me. But as always, FPL has a way of hurting you. And I imagine Areola will pick up a 12-point haul on my bench. Now, looking at my defence, obviously, as I mentioned, I was going for a double Newcastle defence, and I'm more than happy to start Livramento this week. I don't see any reason why he won't start because Trippier is obviously suspended for game week 17, so I expect Livramento to move to right back, even though recently he's been playing at left back. And then we saw Dan Burn return, so I expect Dan Burn to play at left back or Lewis Hall. So double Newcastle defence feels fine for this week, even though Fulham have been fantastic over the last few weeks. The big one right now is I'm playing double Arsenal defence. Now, of course, I will touch on a potential transfer that may change the dynamics of my defence, but it's worth noting, if you're in a position right now where you have double Arsenal defence as well, even though it's against Brighton, who do score in most games, I don't think it's a terrible fixture. Brighton played last night in their Europa League, had a fantastic victory, so I do think they are going to be heavy legs. There's going to be rotation in that Brighton team, whereas Arsenal were able to rest most of their big guns in their Champions League fixture. They've had 2 days extra rest over Brighton. So I'm expecting an Arsenal victory here. And we might just get the opportunity here where Arsenal just steamroll Brighton, who play a second string team. So I do think it is a good fixture. And I wouldn't be thinking you have to sell your Arsenal assets because they start against Brighton. And I feel quite comfortable playing the double up. But I will touch on a transfer in a minute that might change my team. Now, moving into the midfield, there are 3 players here that are just absolutely locked in for the foreseeable future, and that includes Bukayo Saka, Salah, and Son. These guys are going nowhere until game week 21 or maybe 20, because of course Salah goes to AFCON and Son goes for the Asia Cup. But between now and then, I am not touching those players. Cole Palmer, a player who's on 4 yellow cards, and I also don't think he's been fantastic for Chelsea, but I don't really know how the dynamic is going to change once Nkunku is in the team. So I'm very interested to see. But again, I think Cole Palmer is a perfect example of you don't buy him now because he's on 4 yellows, but you absolutely keep him if you already own him. And at home against Sheffield United, I expect him to start, and I'm hoping they could finally break those low blocks. But to be honest with you, I'm not expecting a Chelsea victory. I've predicted 1-1 in that game. But last up, and the one that I didn't think was going to be a concern now is Anthony Gordon, going off of a tight hamstring in the Champions League game against AC Milan. At home against Fulham, a decent attacking fixture. I'd be really frustrated if he doesn't play that game. But because of the next few games being brilliant for Newcastle, I don't really see enough of a reason to sell Anthony Gordon, unless today in the press conferences, Eddie Howe comes out and says Gordon has a hamstring tear and he might be out for the next month. That's the only way I would sell him. Otherwise, I would take the risk, start him, hoping that if he doesn't play in game week 17, he'll definitely be available for game week 18 onwards. I think there's other fires in my team that I need to put out before addressing the Anthony Gordon situation. So hopefully a positive update there. Now, last up, of course, it has to be the forwards. So Erling Haaland is the conversation right now, and there are lots of different directions that we can take it. And again, I'm one of those that has waited right until the last minute to see if we get any sort of information. I know some managers have sold them already, and I get behind that. I don't mind it at all. But for me, I wanted to wait to as close as possible. So here's a few situations right now. If Erling Haaland is confirmed fit for game week 17, then I'm going to keep him because I know I want him back eventually. And even though he could be benched against Crystal Palace, I know I want him for game week 19 or 20. And it just doesn't feel right because even if he comes on for 30 minutes, he could do damage against a Crystal Palace team who have so many defensive injuries right now in that centre defensive mid and defensive area. So I think Haaland will stay if we get a positive update. Then what I will do with my team is I will obviously sell, I say obviously, Mark Guy of Crystal Palace, who's on my bench. I will bring in Pedro Porro, and then I will bench Gabriel, and then I'll have a back three of Pedro Porro away against Nottingham Forest, Saliba, and Livramento. And that looks really good for the foreseeable future with that defence. I can always use the Saliba money later down the line to downgrade to other options like a Pau Torres at Aston Villa. So if Haaland gets the all clear, I will be starting him, but I won't be putting the captaincy on him. I'll be a little bit too concerned about minutes being managed. Now, of course, as you've seen on my team, I am not a Watkins owner right now, so that is a bit of a frustration as I do have Darwin Núñez. So if we do get the news that Haaland is out, confirmed out for game week 17, then I will sell him. Then what I will plan to do is downgrade Erling Haaland to Dominic Solanke, and then I will make the Mark Guy move to Pedro Porro for a -4. Now, a lot of people are probably sat there thinking, Nacho, you've got to sell Erling Haaland for Ollie Watkins. And I do agree that it is a move that I would like to make. However, once we get into game week 18, I'll then be playing Darwin Núñez against Arsenal, which doesn't feel right. And then I will be having Ollie Watkins. For me, I would much rather play Haaland down to Solanke, get the Luton fixture, and then in game week 18, sell Darwin Núñez for Ollie Watkins. Gives me the opportunity to have Dominic Solanke for the next 3 and Ollie Watkins in that plum fixture for game week 18. So if Haaland's out, it will be Haaland down to Solanke and then Mark Guy up into Pedro Porro. If we get no news whatsoever, then I think I will still pull the trigger on the Guy to Pedro Porro move. I'll have a bench option of Gabriel as first sub if Haaland doesn't play, and I will just roll the dice and pray that Erling Haaland starts in that fixture. So that is the plan with the team. Captaincy on Mo Salah, as we're going to look at the projected points now and see that he is right up there as one of the best options available. So let's get into the projected points right now. So, of course, with the absence of Erling Haaland, we need to address he isn't on this list because his minutes are too hard to predict. So we're not going to bother considering him as an option this week. But looking at the midfielders first and foremost, because we need to identify who our captain is going to be for game week 17. Mo Salah for me stands out like a sore thumb, and he does for the projected points at 6.5 against a defence that might be up against Johnny Evans, maybe Reguilon or Dalot at left back, no Bruno Fernandes. I think this is a perfect recipe for a comfortable Liverpool victory, and we know Mo Salah steps up in these sorts of games. So Mo Salah for me is the best captaincy option, and the predicted points back that as well. For those that have been buying, Son looks like a great option with 6 predicted points alongside Saka, and Odegaard emerging now as an option. He was awful in the opening 10 to 12 game weeks, but we start to see a resurgence in big chances created and also in expected goals. So he is one to keep on your radar as maybe a differential Arsenal midfielder later down the line. In terms of goalkeepers, we know that goalkeepers are impossible to predict right now in terms of clean sheets. So you can see them on your screens, but the big boys, the premiums, are the ones that are delivering this week based on predicted points. In terms of the defenders, Trent is the route to go for if you want a premium this week at 5.2 predicted points. I know a lot of managers are actually going there now that they're using the money allocated from Erling Haaland. So I like the move to Trent if you can afford it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be touching Thiago Silva even though he is on the predicted points. And last up the forwards, Dominic Solanke, the clear winner at 6 predicted points. Interestingly, Ollie Watkins only at 4.3. And again, kind of cements the idea of maybe going for Dominic Solanke over Ollie Watkins if you're in a situation like me where you're debating between the two as you have Darwin Núñez. So those are the game week 17 predicted points, and that is going to wrap up today's video. Really hope it's provided some value. As always, stay in the loop online with all of the Twitter news between now and the game week 17 deadline, because I think there will be some Erling Haaland news between now and then. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you can drop a like, smash that subscribe button. It's massively appreciated. Have an amazing game week, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.